late. I apologize for the delay of start. I didn't know if one of the scouts wanted to come up or all lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And I ask you all to rise. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Motion by Mr. Denon, second by Mr. Fiorello. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Those opposed? And that motion carries 6-0 with Mr. Duffy absent this evening. Next item, if it pleases the committee, we would like to move forward one of the recognitions. I have Representative Ackerman here joining us this evening. Hello, Representative. And she has 2 activities to discuss with us.
Honorable School Committee, it's so nice to be, I guess it's not working. It's so nice to be here with you all tonight.
You need a microphone.
All right. Just have to lower that voice down. All right. It's so nice to be back in the district, seeing all of you tonight here at the school committee. I'm here for 2 reasons tonight, both great occasions. First, I would ask if Principal Tenrero could please join me up here for a minute, so that I may publicly recognize you with this citation from the House of Representatives, and I'd like to read it. It says, "Be it here known that the Rhode Island House of Representatives hereby offers its sincerest congratulations to Alan Tenrero, Principal, Cumberland High School, in recognition of the distinguished honor of being named the Rhode Island Association of School Principals as the 2015 High School Principal of the Year." We all congratulate you on behalf of the House of Representatives. Thank you so much. You give us a lot of honor up at the State House. Thank you. And the second reason why I'm here is also on behalf of the House of Representatives. It's my pleasure to give to you, Chairwoman, if you would, I'd like to present to you. I know it's very costly to do programming, and there's a lot of initiatives you want to start. And, I know you work on a lot of PBIS and a lot of good things in the school, and those things have a cost attached to them. So to help you in that endeavor, I have a $1,000 check from the House of Representatives to give it to you. Thank you for your indulgence, and thank you for all the good work that you do every day.
Thank you, Representative Ackerman. I'm glad to see you brought your photographer this evening. Nice work. Alrighty, next item on the agenda, we have the consent agenda, approval of minutes. Special meeting 526, 62, 68, approval of minutes, executive session 526, 62, 68. We have enrollment report from 6-1, school police report from 5-1, residency truancy report from 6-1. Pleasure of the committee on the consent agenda. Motion by Mr. Fiorello. We have a second. Second by Mr. DeModica. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Those opposed? And that motion carries 6-0. Next item on the agenda is report out of executive session meeting from 6/11/2015. We did not meet this evening and there were no votes taken. I don't believe we need to seal the minutes of the executive session as there was no executive session. So we will leave that item with no action. Next item on the agenda is the superintendent's report. Dr. Thornton.
We would first like to recognize one of our teachers, Mr. Mike Stead. Mike, can you please come on up and stand over here so everybody can see you? Okay, the reason that we asked Mr. Stead to come this evening is we thought it was really important to recognize his efforts. For those of you who don't know, Mr. Stead, he is a robotics teacher at the high school. And the reason that we wanted him to come here this evening is because we wanted to recognize him for an application that he did for a Perkins grant to support the robotics program at the high school. And he was very successful in submitting the application and getting it approved. And as a result, the high school will be getting $25,000 in grant money for the robotics program. So we just thought it was really important to recognize him for that effort.
Thank you, Mr. Stead.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
We do have another award to give. We want to recognize the student, but I don't believe she's here just yet, so can we hold off on that?
Okay, yeah, no problem. All right, next item on the agenda then is Chairperson's Report, Funding Formula and the BEP. We have nothing to report this evening. We do know that there's House and Senate legislation with regard to some concerns raised around funding and how it's distributed to different communities. But I think what we'll do is we'll convert this to maybe funding, and we'll have about like town collaboration, as we will have some opportunities to discuss the efforts that Councilor Dwyer has initiated at the tail end of our budget reconciliation. So we'll convert that to make it a little bit more current. Next item on the agenda is reports of standing committees, payment of bills. Mr. DeMonica.
Madam Chair, we did meet tonight upstairs, and we presented the bills in the amount of $1,384,333.45. It was approved on a 3-0 vote, and I would move passage that we approve the payment of bills.
Mr. DeMonica moves passage in for the payment of bills. Did you state the amount? I'm sorry.
Yes, I did. $1,384,333.45.
Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Denon. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Those opposed? And that motion carries 6-0. Next item on the agenda is Fiscal Management Subcommittee update. Mr. DeMonica.
Madam Chair, we had a full agenda tonight. We heard from Dr. Thornton in regards to some of the items that we're going to talk about on next Wednesday in the budget, about putting items in now that we have an idea of how close we're going to be with that. We gave some direction in regards to adding into, for discussion next week, adding in report readings, interventionist, high school reading, writing interventionist, math interventionist at B.F. Norton, reading at Garvin, and the athletic director. So those were items below his original line. We asked him to put it in, and he will bring that back to us next Wednesday for a discussion by the full committee and how to resolve our budget. The other thing is Mr. Pignano gave us the business office monthly report, gave us a list of significant surplus items that are happening this year because of special ed tuitions, child school, vocational school, tuitions, fringe benefits, and teacher salaries that will affect the bottom line when it comes to June 30th of this year as well. And then we did discuss the contracts for about 24, 25 employees, and we have about 12 items in regards to resolutions for purchases for the coming school year. And one note I did want to make, though, is there will be a 10 cents increase for the elementary school lunch starting next September. And that's it for fiscal at the moment.
Thank you, Mr. DeMonica. Next item is Policy and Procedures Subcommittee update. Mr. Fiorello.
Policy did not meet this past week or this week. We will meet in, I believe it's the week of July 10th that we're having meetings, or 20th. Whenever our July meetings are, we will be having a meeting for policy then.
Promise.
Promise.
Excellent. Next item on the agenda is Achievement and Communications Subcommittee update. Mrs. Teal.
Achievement and Communications has not met. Either we've been busy with either the budget or graduation. We'll probably get together again over the course of the summer, and we'll definitely start up full time again in September.
Terrific. Thank you. And Building Committee update. Mr. Fiorello.
I was given the news tonight that on Monday, RIDE has approved our stage 2 project list. So going forward, any of the work from that project list will be reimbursable at 41%, was the work done. And there will be a building committee meeting announced in the next few weeks.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is comments from the public. Anyone in the public wish to speak this evening? Hearing none. All right. Next item is old business. Discussion and/or vote to approve the amended fiscal 16 school budget. I believe we will not be voting on this item this evening, but we did want to open it for discussion for the committee to have their questions resolved. And if anyone in the public wishes to ask a question, just raise your hand and we'll try to have that addressed as well. So, Mr. DeMonic, let's start with you. So you had reviewed some ads that you wanted to include. Could you just quickly go
Sure.
over those?
Dr. Thornton gave us a sheet, and he put it in our drives, that currently is proposed we use approximately $1.3 million of our fund balance for the coming school year to add one high school reading, it's retest from math, a reading interventionist at VF Norton, restore the grade 5 band program, restore middle school sports, restore the middle school guidance counselor, restore the position of community school assistant principal, and no cuts to the high school sports. That was his recommendation in the 1.3 fund balance. We also had discussion about other items. So we took a vote upstairs and we asked Dr. Thornton and Mr. Vignano to model this, adding the McCourt Middle School reading interventionist, add another high school reading, writing interventionist, add a math interventionist at the BF Norton, a reading interventionist at Garvin, and high school, middle school athletic director position would go to part-time. Also, so we've asked them to put that in for next week so we can discuss it on Wednesday. And that meant adding an additional $298,000 of fund balance. From the 1.3, it would make it approximately 1.6 million that we would use for the fund balance.
Thank you, sorry about that.
Right. And then there was a couple of other items that we discussed. We're going to make the purchase this year for Project Lead the Way. Spending approximately $23,000 to start the proposed high school TV tele studio at the school, at the high school. So those items were discussed tonight, and it'll be brought up and modeled for next Wednesday's budget. And hopefully we'll have additional information about the charter school cost for approximately $488,000 that we may not have to spend, and it'll help us significantly next year. So that's on the school budget, so we will discuss this more on Wednesday.
Thank you. Mrs. Teal, sorry.
Dr. York, I don't think this quite gets us all of the interventionists that really are needed to really fully meet the needs of the kids. Is that true?
That's right. Sometime back, you asked me to model a staffing plan that addressed all the students in need across the district with a caseload of around 36 students per teacher, and we did that. So if you go to the top of your page there and take the additions that the fiscal sub has asked to add on, you still have the balance of the dimensions not in yet at the bottom of your page, which would be the BF 1.5 math, the Garvin 1 math, the report 1.5 reading 1 math, around 263K all set.
And by not adding these additional interventionists, I think we discussed an achievement that the kids that are sort of on the cusp, we seem to be servicing the kids that are definitely struggling, but those children that are kind of on the cusp of needing a little extra push to get really fully into the green, they don't seem to be on this list of fully good services, is that correct?
Yes, typically what you'll see is just a slowing down of the process. You won't see as many kids as often as you want to see them.
Can we talk a little bit about, was there a discussion around the high school science and English teachers?
We had a big discussion on that in terms of section size. With the 2.6 science out, class size we're modeling, we're in the low 20s, 22s, 23 in that neighborhood. To me, while that would be certainly great to have those and trying to keep that fund balance always down, I had them out in my previous model for them.
Can we model putting them in 1 by 1 versus 2.6 and 2?
You certainly could just tell us what you would want in, and we come back to you on Wednesday with class sizes based on what you put in.
Yeah, the concern I have is certainly if you look at the average of our student-teacher ratio, Cumberland High Schools is high. And by eliminating 4.6 teachers, it only will make it higher. And I think it's, you know, it's one of those situations where we often say, once we take it out, we never put it back. And I don't want to see the students having the situation where their classes are different from what they are at. So I think it's valuable in there.
Agreed. I would say it's kind of like a rock and a hard place. How high do we fund balance to go versus how small do we want classes? You'll find that place where you're comfortable.
Mr. DeMonica?
I'm sure the current CTA contract calls for 20, up to 26 kids in the classroom. And the model Dr. Thornton talked about tonight, some of these classes we only have 22, 23 kids. I mean, ideally it would be great if you had 20, but, you know, where do we go trying to replace, you know, everything that we want to put on the list?
Sure.
But, I mean, it's open for discussion, certainly open, so anything.
And I would have to express my support of that. It concerns me, especially with the push in the country of trying to get kids up to speed in science. It certainly is not a strength. It's a weakness many children have. And a class size of 26 versus 20 students can make a huge difference in the quality of the teaching and the attention students get. I don't think it's in the best interest of the students at the high school to have classes that are that size as we're trying to ramp up our science offerings. And I do agree that once they get cut, it's extremely difficult to bring them back. And I make that same argument with regard to the interventionists. The money that we spend and invest in these kids in the elementary school years of not having them struggling with math and ELA pays exponential dividends when they hit middle school and high school. They don't continue to be struggling students. And we've had all the elementary schools present in front of achievement, and every single elementary presentation included the fact that interventionists are working and additional interventionists are needed to really fully support these kids so they're not struggling in the middle schools. And it's almost penny wise, pound foolish if you don't fully support these students as much as you can in the elementary schools. Thank you.
Mr. DeMonica?
Just one note, I mean, we can ask Dr. Thornton to model these items, these additional, you know, teachers and interventionists. You know, keep in mind that if the legislature does vote the way we want them, we're hoping they will vote, there is $488,000 worth of money that the district will save. And then we can move things around from capital improvements to stay using that, you know, using money different ways. You know, we always have that opportunity, but we don't know that number yet until next week when the legislature finally passes the budget. So there is some wiggle room in this whole thing. Just it's in full motion right now.
Agreed. Dr. Thornton?
Just one thought on the 488 and the charter money. If that was to come in, if you will, and we don't pay more than we paid this year for 40 additional students, that's great news. I would just wonder what that means for the upcoming years. If that was a one-year type of situation, then we could be looking at 40 plus 40 more, have double the cost the following year. So that's my my worry. I'm not sure if this is a one-time money we'd gladly take, or is it a recurring kind of thing we get?
Anyone else? Okay, so we will be bringing back that. Dr. Thornton, when do you feel that that will be available to us? The revised budget?
Well, probably after tonight, if you tell us what you want in, if we'll model it, I've heard Alex, probably, more like a Monday situation, I would think late Monday, Tuesday.
Yeah, thanks, yeah. We'll work out Monday, Tuesday.
I think step one is you tell us what you want in, and we'll load all of that.
So I would say inclusive of what, my opinion is inclusive of what the fiscal sub brought forward, which essentially went through the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items of below this line not in. And then I would want to see, so the Project Lead the Way would move over to one-time expense to be expended this year. High school TV tel this year, correct? Okay. And
Actually, the TV tail is all materials and items, but not the FTE. We're going to start off without the FTE right now. Still getting some work done with the current staff we have, but 25 is not there.
got that, thank you. And then what I would model is the addition of the high school teachers with maybe a little bit more information just to solidify why the change, what the student enrollment would look like in those classes. I understand from you that there's no reduction in courses, it's just classes get larger. Mr. DeMonica.
Just want to note, Madam Chair, on the TV tel, the 23,000 is for computer equipment, and there's still, Mr. Chairman, still getting bids for the camera itself. That was about $2,200.
Between that and this lane.
Right. So that's an addition that we still have to spend for that.
Okay. And Dr. Thornton, if other items come up between now and Tuesday, would you advise that the committee share those directly with you?
Yes, please.
Got it. Anyone else? Okay, so we're going to scroll back a little bit on our agenda. We have a student recognition this evening. Mr. Mitchell?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, we do have another award to present this evening. Mr. Anestis Diakopoulos is here. He represents the Prudential Company, and he is here to present the Prudential Spirit of Community Award to Kaylee LaPree. Mr. Diakopoulos.
Very good, thank you. I have a second award here for, if you can spell that, you get the award. Thank you for inviting me here this evening to make this presentation. I represent Prudential Financial. The branch here is the Greater Boston branch. I've had the pleasure and honor to make these awards the second year in a row to my local community. Prudential Financial, in partnership with the National Association of Secondary School Principals, high school principals, sponsors this National Awards program for young Americans who care about their world and a way to make a difference. What they're looking for is people who participate in community service. There was 101 young adults like Kaylee who were chosen to visit Washington for 4 days. They were also granted a $1,000 award. This is as a result of selection of both middle school and high school students, programs and efforts that, like Kaylee's, where there was community service in that she helped raise money for homeless shelters, senior citizens, children in low-income families. And the reason why this is important in community services, especially by young children, young adults, these are our replacements in our community. These are the next generation. And to see it so soon and be acclaimed so early in life, gives us hope for our futures, that we have young citizens like Kaylee who will step forward and make things better. Kaylee LaPre, will you please stand forward? Come forward. I have this very awesome award to present to you. Sorry. In here. Thank you, Kaylee, for your service to your community.
Thank you. Congratulations, Kaylee. Thank you for all of your service.
Diacopolis.
You buy a ball.
We could organize this now, right? Alrighty. Moving on, we have a number of contracts, Mr. DeMonica. I'll hand this over to you.
Bear with me, okay? Madam Chair, I want to take two items first out of order, okay? And there's item number 6B3. It's the elementary school. All right, I'm sorry, I'm looking at my notes from there, so it's item number 2C. And it's elementary school principal, and this contract for this administrator was approved on a 3-0 vote, and it was to make some corrections to their contract, and which they're well aware of, and the committee approved that contract 3-0.
It wasn't the elementary, it was one of the middle schools.
I'm sorry, all right, so it's, I'm looking at my note here, I'm sorry, so it's number A, 2A.
Okay.
And that was approved 3-0 to fix that employee's contract. So I would move that we, I don't know how you want to do this, to approve that contract in 3-0.
Okay, let's do this. So Mr. DeMonica moves passage, and that's seconded by Mr. Fiorello. And was it the salary that we fixed, Mrs. Hogan? Could you just give us a little?
Yes, there was an error in calculation of salary in the previous contract, and so we corrected it in this contract
Thank you.
with the consent of the employee.
Thank you.
Okay,
And the majority of these are 3-year contracts,
correct.
and they follow policy G6 for their benefits.
Correct.
Thank you. Okay, so we're starting with 2A on a 3-0 vote, and Mr. DeMonica moves passages, and that's seconded by Mr. Fiorello. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? And that motion carries 6-0.
All right, the next one, Madam Chair, is number 19A, principal of one of the middle schools. That employee contract was wrong last year, and we have corrected it for this year, and 3-0 vote, I move passage of fixing that contract as well. 19A.
19A, so that's middle school contract, and we have a second by Mr. Denon, and again, a salary correction.
Correct.
This was in the other way, we actually shorted the employee in the previous contract, so we're correcting that.
Thank you.
And that was a 3-year contract as well.
Thank you. All right, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? And that motion carries 6-0.
All right, Madam Chair, we've got one more group, and that's going to be number 6, number 7, number 8, number 9, number 12, and number 13. On a 2-to-1 vote for approval, sending it to the committee, those employees, 6 employees, Dr. Thornton had made a recommendation that they be paid market salary, and so instead of getting the 1.5% that we've offered, or we've made recommendations for the others, they're gonna get a bump in salary. For this year, no other increases for this year, and then next year, 1.5%, and the third year, 1.5% increase on this salary. So that was on a 2-to-1 vote to send it to the full committee for approval. On 6, 7, 8, 9, 12, and 13.
And are you moving passage of that?
I am moving passage on the 2-to-1.
And do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Fiorillo. So just for the record, this is confidential assistant to the superintendent and school committee, confidential assistant to the assistant superintendent, confidential assistant to the director of human resources, again, confidential assistant to the director of special education, district data manager, and district support technician.
Correct.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Opposed.
All right, so that was against and against, is that correct? Okay, so Mr. DeMonica is against, and Mr. Salvatore is against, Mrs. Teal and Mr. Fiorello, and myself and Mr. Denon are in the affirmative.
All
So
right,
4-2.
the next one's, Madam Chair, is going to be, okay, B1, 2B, 3A and B, 4, 5, 10, 11, 14, 15, 16, 17, A, B, C, D, E, number 18, number 19B were approved on 3-year contracts. I'm sorry, I have to make one correction here. I have to find it. B number 2, we'll take that separately afterwards, so B2 is out, 2B is out. So on those other numbers that I read off, the assistant to the business manager, assistant principals of learning, teaching and learning at the high school, there's 2 of them. Attendance truancy officer, business manager, director of information technology, director of human resources, information technology manager, network manager, preschool administrator, 5 elementary school principals, the principal at the high school, principal at the other middle school. Those contracts were approved on a 3-0 vote, and it would be 3 years, 1.5, 1.5, 1.5. I move passage on those ones.
Mr. DeMonica moves passage of the contracts as presented, the subset of contracts. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Fiorillo. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? And that motion carries 5-1 with Mr. Salvatore.
All right, the next contract, Madam Chair, is item B, in section B, 2B, middle school principals contract. And we voted on that contract there to give 0% for this year and to be determined next year. There are 2 years remaining on that one contract. And that passed on a 3-0 vote. And I would move passage of that. 2-1? All right, so 2-1 vote.
2-1. All right. And you're moving passage of that contract. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Fiorillo. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? So that's, Mrs. Teal is yes, Mr. Fiorillo is yes. Fiorillo, Vallejo is yes. You're against? Mr.
I'm sorry, I voted against it in something, but since it didn't pass, I'm getting here. Sorry about that.
No worries.
I understand.
So Mr. Denon is a yes.
Mr. DeMonica, that's the recommendation is 0 to be determined. Okay,
Thank you.
so that is a yes from Mr. DeMonica.
Okay. And so 1 against. Correct. Okay. So that's a 5-1. Mr.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
item number 20 and 21 were tabled till next Wednesday.
Okay, so we will table them here. Are you moving to table them?
I'm moving table.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Thank you by Mr. Fiorello. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? And that is tabled on a 6-0 vote. Thank you. 2C, I think, is missing. I don't have 2C. Mrs. Vogel, are you an affirmative? It looks like 2C is the only one we missed.
No, I crossed that off by mistake, Madam Chair. So we did deal with 2C as well. It was the elementary school assistant principal at community. The position's being restored. And we voted on a 3-0 vote to approve that contract, 1.5, 1.5, 1.5. And I move passage.
All right. So we have a motion, and we have a second by Mr. Denon and Mr. Fiorello. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Those opposed?
Thank you for being with me.
No, you did a great job. Okay, so I think we have them all. I've circled B1, I've followed 2, 3, 4 through 18, 19, we did 2 transactions, and then assistant soup and soup. We're just going to have to wait till next time. All right. All set? Thank you. Next item on the agenda is new business, discussion and or vote to rescind teacher dismissal recommendations. Mrs. Vogel.
As we were unable to have executive session prior to the meeting, I would request, and I don't know if I can request on the floor, that we maybe amend the agenda. I asked Steve if we could amend the agenda to after the executive session after, I don't know, because we can't vote, we haven't taken it up in executive session yet. Or we just have the executive session and we put it on Wednesdays for a vote. But either way, we cannot act. I'm sorry, I don't mean to, I'm not trying to be.
No, no.
If there's no timing concern on your part, that would be probably safer.
That's correct. So we'll have executive session this afternoon, after this meeting, and then Wednesday they can vote out on the floor because they wouldn't vote in executive session, correct? Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Mr. Fiorello?
Mrs. Vogel, does that impact any kind of unemployment or anything like that, seeing as we're going beyond the school year?
No, because it's only the day after. So those employees that if you do vote to rescind their non-renewals would receive a letter that night that they have reasonable assurance, but they wouldn't be able to put a claim in time for. My response would be, hey, look at this letter of reasonable assurance. So I think we'd be all set with that as long as we do it Wednesday.
So there are, next item is discussion and or vote to rescind teacher non-renewals for the 2015-16 school year.
That would be the
Same situation, so we would want to discuss in executive. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is discussion and or vote to approve elementary lunch price increase. Mr. Monica, is that you?
Madam Chair, that was in fiscal tonight. We had previously discussed this with Mark Tucker. We audited annually to make sure that the meals we charge are the correct price. And it's been a couple of years since we changed the prices. We're required to go up at least 5 cents. We're going at 10 cents, so we can replenish the account for maintenance and repairs, etc. And so we are going, our recommendation was to raise the elementary school price next year from $2.25 to $2.35. The middle school would stay the same at $2.50, and the high school would be at $3. We need to do this to satisfy the federal government that we charge them the correct amount for our lunches.
Are you moving passage of
I am moving passage effective the 2015-2016 school year.
Thank you. Mr. DeMonica moves passage of approval of elementary lunch price increase. Do I have a second?
Second.
And that increase, you said, Mr. DeMonico, was 10 cents?
It was 10 cents.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Those opposed? And that motion carries 6-0. Thank you. Next item on the agenda, we have a number of resolutions. The first one was for gun-free schools, and was that in your subcommittee?
Madam Chair, that was not mine.
Okay. So, you know what, let's move ahead, and then I'll hold that one up as we move along.
All right, so fiscal met tonight, Madam Chair, on item number SCPR 6/2015-16 was a resolution authorizing and empowering the school committee to execute a purchase order with the Apple Store for equipment needed to create the TV television at the high school, and the amount not to exceed $20,895. It's in the, it wasn't budgeted for this year, but the money is currently in technology budget, so that's where the money will come for the purchase of this equipment, and we are buying computers for the TV tel room so that students can edit and do the videos, etc. We passed on a 3-0 vote with the committee. I move passage.
Mr. DeMonico moves passage of SCPR 6/2015-16. And just for the record, Mr. DeMonico, what was the amount of that resolution?
The amount was $20,895. And this is for the computer equipment. As I indicated earlier, we still have to buy our cameras. So, yeah.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Dennett. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Those opposed? And that motion carries 6-0.
Next item, Madam Chair, is SCPR 6/2015-17, a resolution authorizing and empowering the school committee to execute a purchase order with CDWG of Vernon, Illinois for computers and computer LCD displays for a project lead the way at the middle schools in an amount not to exceed $49,611. This item was not budgeted in this year, but it's coming out of technology's budget. And this is to start the program at the middle school for next year. And I move passage.
Mr. DeMonico moves passage of SCPR 6/2015-17. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Fiorello. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? And that motion carries 6-0.
Next item, Madam Chair, is SCPR 6/2015-18. A resolution authorizing and empowering the school committee to execute a purchase order with the balance between of New York, for training with think maps in an amount not to exceed $15,000. And said money will be coming from the assistant superintendent's professional development budget for this year. And Mr. Mitchell can speak more about what it actually is entailed, but it is professional development, so we can get this program running as well. And it's not, it passed 3-0 from the committee.
So Mr. DeMonico moves passage of SCPR 6/2015-18, correct?
Correct.
And do I have a second? Second by Mr. Salvatore and Mr. Dennett. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? And that motion carries 6-0. Thank you.
Okay, next one, Madam Chair, is SCPR 6/2015-19. A resolution authorizing and empowering the school committee to execute purchase orders with Thinking Maps of Cary, North Carolina. Thinking Map teacher manuals and training guides in an amount not to exceed $8,250. And Thinking Map manuals in an amount not to exceed $26,120.80 for a combined total of $34,370.80. This is coming out of the assistant superintendent's budget fiscal year 14-15. And this is to get the training guides that we need to train our staff to train the teachers that will be doing this. And it passed 3-0, I move passage.
Sounds like a lot of training. So Mr. DeMonico moves passage of the SCPR 6/2015-19. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Fiorello. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion carries.
All right, Madam Chair, SCPR 6 2015-20, SCPR 6 2015-21, and SCPR 6 2015-22. The paperwork wasn't ready for those, and so we tabled that to next Wednesday. So I move those items be tabled to our next meeting.
Mr. DeMonica tables the items that he represented. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Denon. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Those opposed? That motion carries 6-0.
Next is SCPR 6 2015-23, a resolution authorizing and empowering the school committee to execute a purchase order for staff development for educators of Peterborough, New Hampshire, an amount not to exceed $9,700. It is half the amount of $9,700 will be budgeted in this year's superintendent's budget, and the other half will come next year in the fiscal year 15-16. So the invoice has been split, and it's to hire a gentleman named Rick Warmel, and I'm sure Dr. Thornton or Mr. Mitchell can talk more about this if the committee has questions. He's coming in to do professional development for the school district. Parents will be able to attend some of the professional development that he does, and Dr. Thornton will be making it available to other school districts as well at a cost that will come back to the district for that on database creating. It passed 3-0. I move passage.
Mr. DeMonica moves passage of SCPR 6 2015-23. Do I have a second?
Second.
And do we know, Dr. Thornton or Mr. Mitchell, when the kind of announcement of that will go out so that folks can mark their calendar if the public wishes to attend?
Well, now that it's, or as soon as it's approved by the school committee, we'll start working on getting the word out. We'll use our communications expert to help us with that. So we definitely want to, I think that one of the more important things that we need to do is provide an opportunity for parents to come and hear this nationally recognized expert, and he will be able to address any questions and concerns that they may have.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries 6-0.
Next, Madam Chair, is SCPR 6 2015-24, a resolution authorizing and empowering the school committee to execute a purchase order with Delta Educational for leasing of science kits for the fiscal year 15-16 school year, and an amount not to exceed $50,050. Madam Chair, this passed upstairs in a 3-0 vote. We did not select the lowest bidder. The difference in the bidding cost was $528. We are going directly with the company that makes the science kits versus the middle person. And Mr. Pignano provided a letter to the school committee finance members in regards to why he felt we should go with the next highest, to go with the highest bidder, and Mr. Adams did read the letter before we took our vote. So we passed 3-0. I move passage.
All right. Mr. DeMonica moves passage of the GemsNet Science Kits, SCPR 6 2015-24, and the letter will be attached to the record. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Denon. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? And that motion carries 6-0.
All right, next, Madam Chair, SCPR 6 2015-25. A resolution empowering the school committee to award to E&E Systems of Camp Mass lighting retrofits at the following locations. Garden School for $113,236.64. Ashton School, $131,175.26. Community School, $129,707.27. North Cumberland Middle School Gymnasium for $10,439. Total amount not to exceed $384,558.17. It will save us approximately $25,000 annually in utility cost. There are rebates. It could be anywhere from $120,000 talked about it upstairs and, you know, about which project we get started first, if we didn't have all the money, but he asked us to approve it all tonight, and the cost will come from the designated capital fund balance, which will grow this year as well. We do anticipate that, and it passed in a 3-0 vote. Mr. Cabrera, if you need to get some more details, he can give you some more. So I move passage in a 3-0 vote. And there was a delay in this because we had to wait for RIDE to, even though it wasn't in our phase, I believe it wasn't in our phase 2 project, we had to wait for RIDE to approve everything in order to get this done. So the work may not get all done. We certainly will get all done this year before June, but we'll carry forward to next year.
Thank you. So I have a motion to approve the lighting project. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Fiorillo. Will it begin in the summer? Do you know, Mr. DeMonica?
It should start.
Perfect. Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Those opposed? And that motion carries 6.
Next, Madam Chair, is SCPR 6, 2015-26, a resolution authorizing the town and school committee to execute a purchase order with B&H Photo of New York, New York to replace the sound equipment in the high school auditorium in an amount not to exceed $6,227. The cost will come from the designated fund balance, and the bidder, B&H, is on the National Joint Power Federal Bid List. This equipment's going to be used for the school committee as well, so we can hear at our meetings in the auditorium and so forth. And I move passage on 3-0 vote.
So Mr. DeMonica moves passage of SCPR 6, 2015-26, and Mr. Salvatore seconds it. Any further discussion? Mrs. Teal, do you remember the good old days when we had those little microphones that you always had to push the button to talk? We always forgot. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Those opposed? That motion carries 6-0.
All right, Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
CPR 6, 2015-27, the data backup hardware. There was no vote taken tonight. Mr. Chandler advised us that we had some problems with our data backup hardware, and so he is researching the exact cost. So we move that to next Wednesday to possibly bring it back up from the school committee. Obviously, we need to fix our backup system very quickly, and we're getting by right at the moment. So that's table till next meeting.
So we will move to table this to our next meeting. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Bennett. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Those opposed? That motion carries 6-0. All right, discussion and a vote to approve overnight student field trip, high school student trip grad night, April 2016. Hi there, thanks for being so patient.
Hello. I'm Audrey Berthium, and I'm here tonight to ask for approval for Grad Night 2016. This will be coming up my 8th year going on a trip, and the trip has run for over 20 years successfully. This is a 4-day, 3-night adventure to Florida, and the kids get to go to Universal Studios for a grad bash exclusively for seniors. This past year we took 49 students and 5 chaperones. This was our first year going prior to April vacation. We typically go sort of at the tail end of vacation. And we had a lot of positive feedback from that, from students, from teachers, from parents. Normally we send them to school the next day, and we get home usually about midnight. So we're hoping that we'll be able to do that again. This year we also received plenty of positive feedback from hotel staff, airport staff, the Disney staff about how well behaved and well mannered the kids were. No medical attention was needed. Everybody was safe and happy. And we came back all right. So this year we're looking to go to Disney April 14th through the 17th. So it'll be the 2 days prior to April vacation. The itinerary looks the same as last year pretty much, except we don't have flights or travel times and hotel accommodations until a little bit later in the fall. And the cost of the trip has gone up this year to, last year was $1,200 and this year it will be $1,300. So I'm just looking to hope that we can pass that.
Any questions? Mr. Salvatore?
Hello, thank you. What day, April 14th? you said?
Yeah, April 14th, so it'll be Thursday, Friday.
So the kids go to school?
Yeah, so they're required to be in school until Wednesday, so they must be in school on Wednesday, and then we leave early in the morning on Thursday, usually at 3 a.m. typically.
Oh, you leave at 3 a.m.?
3 a.m. on Thursday. Yeah, so they're required to go to school on that Wednesday, and
That's
then,
early.
yeah,
Okay.
we like to be the first in line.
Anyone else? Mr. Fiorello?
You said you had 49 students this year with 5 chaperones?
Yes.
Is that a good number of chaperones for that number of students?
Yeah, it's always, as far as I've done it, that's about 10 students per chaperone, and it seems to work.
Pleasure of the committee. I'm going to let Mr. Fiorello have it. You've been very busy, Mr. DeMonica. And do I have a second? Any further discussion? All those in favor? Those opposed? And that motion carries 6-0.
Thank
very
you.
much. Bon voyage. All right, so we have one item left on this resolution, and it's for the resolution on gun-free schools. And I'll read through this pretty quickly. It has been approved by many school committees throughout the state, so I just want to highlight the whereas, and there are a number. Whereas the state law allows concealed carry permit holders to carry firearms onto school grounds. Whereas the vast majority of states do not permit firearms on school grounds, and whereas the study by the Violence Policy Center of Washington, D.C. gun safety organization found from May 2007 to February 2015 that research involving 722 deaths in 544 concealed carry shootings in 36 states and the District of Columbia. The vast majority of those killings were deemed non-self-defense, and only 16 cases were eventually ruled lawful and self-defense. Whereas the 2-year comprehensive final report of the Sandy Hook Advisory Committee, consisting of school administrators, teachers, law enforcement, psychiatrists, lawmakers, and legal professionals, dated February 2015, made special findings, including safe schools climate, safe schools design and operation strategies, that specifically did not include the use of firearms or arming teachers or non-law enforcement civilians in schools. And whereas the National School Boards Association believes that students must have safe and supportive climates and learning environments that support their opportunities to learn, that are free of abuse, violence, bullying, weapons, and harmful substances, including alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs. Whereas the Rhode Island Association of School Committees Executive Board have voted to support banning concealed weapons on school grounds except for duly authorized members of law enforcement. Whereas the Rhode Island Superintendents Association have adopted the American Association of School Administrators position paper on school safety in a response to the tragedy at Sandy Hook Elementary, which specifically denounces efforts to bring more guns into our schools by teachers and administrators, and reminds us that schools must remain the safest places for children. And whereas the Rhode Island educational leadership has carefully considered and implemented regularly audited school and district-wide building safety plans and emergency protocols, inclusive of first responders, local law enforcement, and the school community. And finally, now therefore be it resolved that the Cumberland School Committee respectfully requests the Rhode Island General Assembly to support House Bill 5861 and any and all legislative proposals that would disallow non-law enforcement to carry concealed firearms onto school grounds. As I mentioned, many school committees have adopted this, and I would advocate for this piece of resolution here for us to support that as well. So I respectfully request your support in this, and I would be looking for someone to move passage of this.
Madam Chair, I would move passage, sending this off to the legislature, and we support it. I know a couple of other school committees are questioning it, but keeping guns off schools property is it's a no-brainer. I mean, guns kill people when they're used irresponsibly, and we don't need them here. I support this wholeheartedly.
Mr. DeMonica supports the resolution of SCR 2015-07. Do I have a second? I second by Mrs. Denon and Mr. Denon and Mr. Teal. Any further discussion?
You know,
Yes, Mr. Fiorillo?
I just wanted to point out that just a few months ago, there was a story in I forget what state it was, but it was a state that allowed teachers and administrators to bring concealed weapons, and the gun accidentally went off and actually injured either the same teacher or a teacher that was standing next to her at the time. So, like Mr. Monica said, it's a no-brainer.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Those opposed? And that motion carries 6-0. All right, we're almost finished. Mrs. Fogel, no personnel recommendations this evening.
There are not this evening.
Excellent, thank you. School committee comments, school liaison reports. Nothing. I just want to say I thought the high school activities were outstanding for the graduation. A beautiful day. Kids looked great. Speeches were pretty good. And no, just a wonderful event. Families were very happy. All right. No other comments? So we will need a vote to go into executive session for items, discussion of items referred to in Rhode Island General Law 4246(5). Before going into executive session, the school committee shall state for the record that any persons to be discussed pursuant to this subsection have been notified, and that shall be recorded in the minutes of the meeting. We have personnel matters, negotiation, litigation, and so we will not adjourn until the end. But we will head on up to executive session. So good evening, everyone. Thank you.